Hola, buenas tardes. Today we are going to start talking about el pretérito. So we're going to focus on AR verbs for this chapter. We're not going to learn ER and IR verbs yet, so you don't have to worry about multiples. So if you come across an ER or IR verb in this chapter, it's going to be in the present tense because we haven't learned that yet. Okay, so let's review a little bit. So when we conjugate a verb, we underline the stem and you drop the ending and then you add your new ending. So this should look really, really familiar to you so far. Okay. So this is what our present tense AR verbs look like. So we have this o, as, a, amos, ice, on. If you don't know how to do this, come talk to me as soon as humanly possible because we're going to introduce a new set of endings in this chapter to get into the preterite tense. Okay, so let's look at, down below you have a chart for hablar. So go ahead and conjugate hablar into the present tense and then translate it. You have two verb charts. You should have one for just the preterite, or one for just hablar conjugated, and then one for hablar translated into each verb form. Okay, so hit pause now and go ahead and fill out those two charts. And then when you're done, hit play and we'll see how you did. Okay, so hablar, or maybe it's just one, sorry. Yeah, it's one chart. Sorry, it's one chart for the endings and then one chart for both. Okay, for the conjugation and the translation. So hablar in the present tense. So hablo is I speak, hablas, you speak, habla, either he, she, or you formal speak, hablamos, we speak, habláis, y'all in Spain speak, hablan, they or y'all not in Spain speak. Okay, so this should look very, very familiar so far. Now we're going to introduce the preterite. Okay, the preterite is one of the past tenses in Spanish. It is used to to discuss completed actions in the past. So it's an action, it's a one and done. Um, it's not repeating, it's not repetitive, it's not ongoing. It's not like I started it then and then I'm still doing it now. It's a started and finished action in the past. Okay, so such as yesterday, I talked to the teacher. When did it happen? It happened yesterday. I can put it on a timeline. Okay, we danced last Friday. She washed the car last night. So those are all examples of what the preterite would look like in English. So it's gonna be this ed ending on a lot of them. And English has a lot of irregular past tense verbs, but for the most part, it's gonna be that ed ending. Okay, so when you're conjugating into the preterite tense for an AR verb, it's going to be the same process. You're going to figure out what your stem is. The stem's going to stay the same. And then you're going to drop your AR, and then you're going to add this new set of endings. Okay, so for the yo form, you're adding a. So E with an accent. To form, aste. Usted el ella form, O with an accent mark. Nosotros amos. Vosotros, your ending is astéis. And ustedes, ellos, ellas, aron. Okay? It is super, super, super importante to make sure that you include your accent marks on your preterite verb forms. Okay? If you leave off your verb form, it completely changes the meaning of your verb. Okay? So, for example, if I leave off the accent mark with like hable, it becomes a formal command. Like I'm telling usted to talk to someone. Hablo means I speak, but habló means he or she spoke. Okay, so it's a big, big difference because the endings, this accent mark here, changes not only the subject, but it changes the when it happened. Okay, so if you don't have your accent marks on your verbs, I'm not going to give you any points. I mean, that's the way it's always been with like estar and our vosotros forms that had accents in the present tense. But I'm reiterating that this is so important that you have your accent mark. Okay, same thing here. It changes it from I did something to hey, usted, go do this thing. Okay, it's very, very important to have your accent marks. So let's look at hablar in the preterite tense. Okay, So go ahead and give this a shot. So go ahead and conjugate hablar into the preterite tense and then put how it translates now that's in the preterite next to it. And then hit pause now, and then when you're done, hit play, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so number one, or not number one, these aren't numbered. Hablé, yo hablé, I spoke. Tú hablaste, you spoke. Usted, él, ella habló, he, she, or you formal spoke. And it does change the pronunciation of this as well, this accent mark. It changes it from habló, stress on the A, to habló, stress on the O. Same thing here, from hablé, stress on the A, hablé, stress on the E. Nosotros hablamos, we spoke. So the question is, how are you going to tell hablamos, we speak, from hablamos, we spoke? It's a good question. I'm sure that some of you guys were thinking of that because you're smart people. You're going to have to rely on your context. You're going to have to look for your indicator words, and we're going to talk about what those indicator words are in just a moment. Okay? Vosotros hablasteis. No accent mark in the vosotros anymore. The only place we have accent marks are the yo and the usted, el, ella form now. And ustedes, ellos, ellas hablaron. Y'all spoke, they spoke. Okay? Down below, we have some practice verbs. So I want you to translate those verb phrases into Espanol, sorry. Okay? Or sorry, before we do that, let's look at usar. Sorry, I forget what my notes look like. I just went over these a minute ago. So let's look at usar in the present tense and then in the preterite. So uso, usas, usa, usamos, usáis, usan. Okay? I use, you formal use, or he or she uses, we use, y'all use, they use. Okay, now go ahead and conjugate usar into the preterite and hit pause and hit play when you're done. Okay, so then it becomes usé, usaste, usó, usamos, usasteis, and usaron. Okay, so now I used, you used, he or she used, we used, y'all used, they used. Okay, so the only difference here is going to be the context. We use the computer every day. We used the computer last night. They're exactly the same. You just have to look at the context around it. Now there are some practice ones. So go through those, go through these and translate each one. This one, to skate, is not one that we use very frequently. It is patinar, P-A-T-I-N-A-R. Okay, hit pause and then hit play when you're done and check your work. All right, number one, you spoke. Tú hablaste. They worked. Ellos trabajaron. She danced. Ella bailó. Make sure you have this accent mark here. We sang. Nosotros cantamos. I cooked. Yo cociné. He listened. Él escuchó. You skated. Tú patinaste. Y'all in Spain swam. Vosotros nadasteis. She cleaned. Ella limpió. And they washed. Ellos lavaron. Okay, I know that these are going to look really strange to you at first, but that's okay. We are just expanding our knowledge of Spanish. This is going to open more doors to communication. So now we're not just stuck talking about the now. Now we can talk about the then. Okay, let's look at these indicator words. Okay, so anytime you see these words in a sentence, that's going to tell you that we need to use the preterite. Okay, so ayer, yesterday, anoche, last night, anteayer, I added this to your vocab list. This is the day before yesterday. La semana pasada, last week. And really, anytime you see the word pasado or pasada, that's going to tell you to use the preterite. So like la semana pasada, the past week, the week that was past. And then if you have your day of the week, pasado, like el viernes pasado, last Friday, el jueves pasado, last Thursday, el sábado pasado, last Saturday. Okay? El mes pasado, last month. El año pasado, last year. And then this other one that doesn't have a pasado, I'll say with a time period, and that's like that long ago. Hace 2 semanas que yo fui a Kansas City. I went to Kansas City 2 weeks ago. Sorry, you haven't learned ser yet, or year. Let me think of a better example. Hace 2 semanas yo bailé con Javier. Okay, 2 weeks ago I danced with Javier. I don't know Javier. Okay, but it's that ago, this long ago. Okay, we have a little bit of we have a couple of irregulars when we're talking about AR verbs. So AR verbs do not have stem changes in the preterite. So like jugar is going to be regular. What are other AR verbs that are irregular? Almorzar is going to be regular. Encontrar, you guys haven't really learned those yet, but you will. But so you don't have to worry about stem changing in the preterite for AR verbs. But let's talk about car-gar-zar verbs. Okay, so a verb that ends in either CAR, GAR, or ZAR is going to have a spelling change in the yo form only. It's only in the yo form. Don't try to do it in the other 5 forms. It doesn't need to happen. Okay, and this just keeps the pronunciation the same, because I know I've said in class a few times that in Spanish, when the rule changes the spelling, they change the spelling to match the rule. Okay, or they change the spelling to match the pronunciation, rather. Okay, because we want our verbs to sound like our verbs. We don't want to change the sounds of them. Okay, so let's talk about a car verb. So in the yo form, only the yo form, the C is going to change a QU. And that's because that E that comes in the ending, the E with the accent mark, is going to change the sound of the C from a K to a S. And that's going to change the sound of, that's going to change what our verb sounds like. And we want our verb to still sound like the infinitive. Okay, so I played, I think this is for an instrument, tocar. So it's going to become yo toque. If I have a C here, it's going to sound like yo tose. And tose does not sound like tocar. So we change that to a QU because the QU makes that K sound that we want to keep. Okay? I took out the trash, or I took a picture. Sacar, yo sake with a QU. If I have the C there, it becomes sase, and sase does not sound like sakar. Okay? I looked for. Buscar, okay, becomes yo busque with a QU, because otherwise it's yo busque, because I'd have to pronounce both S sounds. One for the S, one for the C. And that busque doesn't sound like buscar. Practicar is another one, practique, otherwise it's practice, okay? So this is just to keep the sound the same, okay? Gar verbs, so verbs that end in GAR, the G is going to change to a GU, and you're not going to pronounce the U. The U is just going to be there to keep the G as a G sound as opposed to a H sound. Okay, so I played a sport, that's jugar, becomes yo jugué. And like I said, that U is just there to keep the G hard. Okay, if we don't have this U here, it becomes yo jugué. And jugué does not sound like jugar. Okay, stem changes don't happen in AR verbs in the preterite. Okay, I paid. This is a new one that you got this chapter. Pagar, yo pagué with a GU. Otherwise, it's pagué. And pagué does not sound like pagar. Okay. Zar verb, or I arrived. You guys haven't learned arrived yet, but you will. And that verb is llegar. And that becomes yo llegué with a GU. Sorry, I can't highlight that one. Otherwise, it brings up this annoying little thing. Okay. So with the GU, because otherwise it's yo yehe, which is fun to say, yehe, but not properly spelled. So whenever we have G, we have to change it to a GU. Okay, ZAR verbs. I'm going to have to go fast. I'm almost out of time on my recorder. ZAR verbs, the Z changes to a C because we can't have ZE in Spanish. It has to be CE. So comenzar becomes yo comencé, I began. Empezar, yo empecé. That's another word for I began. And almorzar, almorcé. I ate lunch. So, and then all 3 of these are stem changing verbs. These are both E to IE, and this one's O to UE. We don't have to worry about that in the preterite tense. Okay? So there's no stem change on any of those. But we can't have ZE, just like with lápices, we had to change. Yep. Okay, the exercises will be in a separate document.